Okay, what up ladies and gents, your favorite Asian robot right here, hopefully your favorite content creator, official content creator for the First Ascendant, and today I'm going to be talking about my Freyna build. Now, there are two ways to really build Freyna, and you have to understand her skills to understand both of those. Now, I will go through both of them as best I can and also explain her skills, how everything works, all that kind of stuff. But before we get into that, if you guys have not yet registered a content creator, please consider registering me, alright? Link is in the description of this video. I'd be very grateful if you chose to support me. Alright, let's get into it. Now, this build is free to play just like all the others, so there's no energy activator, no catalyst beyond the basics, and I'll be showing you how I've built my Freyna, what I do with my Freyna, and how you can do the same thing, okay? So, let me quickly remove the cam. Now, before we get into anything else, what you need to understand is that the reactor for Freyna is going to be a Toxic Mechanics reactor. You are looking for Toxic Skill Power, Tech Skill Power, and down the bottom, if you can get a Toxic Skill Boost option, that might be really great. But realistically speaking, those only increase your damage by a relatively minor amount. Okay, so just be aware of that. The main thing you need is an optimized condition that is good for you, Toxic Skill Power, Tech Skill Power, because all of her main damaging skills are tech-based. Excuse the coughing. Still recovering, so you guys may have to put up with a little bit of that. Okay, now that you understand the reactor, what about her external components? Her external components, defense, max hit points, defense, max MP, defense, electric resistance if you can, defense, max shield. Okay, this is pretty much standardized. You will never change most of these unless you don't want defense, you want to go for more hit points, up to you. All right, but I go for defense. Okay, so that's the external components and the reactor covered. Now weapons obviously not covered because the weapons are dependent on the weapon builds that you're going for. The basics should be enough for getting into hard mode and doing the basics in hard mode. I will cover more advanced weapon builds at a later time as I progress through the hard mode bosses, but I will be covering the Descendant modules first instead, and that I think is much more crucial. All right, so let's get into building Freyna. How do you build Freyna? Well, in order to build Freyna properly, you need to understand her skills. Okay, as you can see, I've got no energy activator, no catalysts in here other than her basics. She starts with 2 rutile slots, which is really excellent for your defense mods, things like that. But, like I said, before we build her, we need to understand her skills. So, at base, Freyna has a passive called Contagion Links. The more enemies inflicted with poison, the more her toxic skill power increases. This basically is like, you can have 15 stacks of this, and the total toxin power that you can have is 18%. It doesn't sound like a lot, but toxic skill power is separate from skill power, which is why it acts as a bit of a multiplier, all right? So be aware of that and take note that it does help your damage overall, okay? Now, her first skill is called Venom Trauma. Venom Trauma causes her to shoot a single toxic bullet, which will deal damage to enemies, creating a toxic puddle and inflicting Room 0 trauma. Room 0 trauma also deals damage over time. It is a small amount, but you can actually boost this quite effectively, and I'll show you how. All right. Room 0 trauma then inflicts continuous damage and poison to nearby enemies. Fun fact, poison is separate, has its own skill power, all right? It has its own DOT skill power, and it lasts for 10 seconds, which is actually longer than Room 0 trauma. So you can deal multiple ticks of damage to your enemies, all right? So long as you know what you're doing. So that's what Venom Trauma does. All of her skills follow the same pattern. Her second skill is a buff, giving her increased defense for 10 seconds, and any enemies that hit her in melee are inflicted with Room 0 trauma and poison. Alright? Putrid Venom is slightly different. Putrid Venom will create a toxic puddle on the ground. So throw it toward an enemy, it creates a toxic puddle on the ground. The toxic swamp itself does continuous damage over time, the longer enemies remain inside. When enemies remain inside, they are inflicted with Venom Soaked. Venom Soaked then causes them to leave toxic footprints. Neither Venom Soaked nor toxic footprints will cause damage. However, both of these have their own duration. Enemies are Venom Soaked for 10 seconds. Toxic footprints last for 8 seconds. If any enemy touches the toxic footprint, they are then inflicted with poison, which does damage over time. So the swamp might actually end up looking like it deals less damage than the Venom Bullet, depending on how close-knit the enemies are. If you use Venom Bullet, enemies start to spread their venom like a plague. Whereas with this one, they have to touch the footprints to spread it. So there's a bit of a difference there. And you'll notice that the skill power is multiplied by a modifier of 41% for the Toxic Swamp and 60% for the Poison. All right. This is what a skill power modifier is, and I'll show and demonstrate that after showing you the basic mods for the build, okay? Last but not least is Freyna's ultimate. And this is the only reason that you can build her in two ways. The ultimate already has higher skill power for the room 0 trauma that it inflicts and for the poison that it inflicts, all right? So this is very different from your normal venom bullets. This one has a long cooldown, all right? And her weapon fires 45 shots. I don't believe that you can affect it by changing the type of weapon you wield, all right? I have tried, but I have not seen varying results. That being said, if you guys understand, like if you guys know that there's a varying result, please let me know. I would love to know more about how her particular weapon can be modified or changed to deal more damage, especially since it's got a limit of 45 bullets. Is there a way I can get more bullets in there? Is there a way, like, other than duration to make it last longer, is there other ways that I can run this? Let me know what you think, okay? But for the basics, for the F2P basics, all right, I built her in a very particular way. And like I said, I'm going to show you that now, okay? So let's go. Okay, whenever we start any build, what do we always start with? We start with the melee weapon. So Freyna, you can use the Tonfa, you can use the short sword. Let's put on the Tonfa, increase my mod capacity by 10, okay? This brings us up to 60 when Freyna is at level 40, all right? From here, what you want to do is, first of all, increase defense. This goes into one of her rutile slots, which halves the cost. So you can put on a little bit more. After that, it's hit points, of course. So increase hit points right here. And then you'll probably want to have Battle of Stamina. This can increase hit points and increase the skill duration. Now, between Spear and Shield, which I had used in some videos before understanding the difference between the skill power modifier and the skill power itself, let me show you right now. If I were to equip Spear and Shield, all right, let's take it out of the rutile slot and save this right now, her skill power goes up by 8.1%. But take note that none of these actually change. The skill power here, the modifier still says 269.9, right? This is because the number, it says skill power multiplied by something, right? Skill power times 10.2%. So basically, increasing her skill power doesn't really help much for her DOTs because you're only inflicting 10.2% of your current skill power as damage, right? If you were to change this over to, I believe it's called Iron Defense, which has a skill power modifier of 3%. Okay, watch how this changes. Save that. Take note that this now increases the modifier. So skill power is now multiplied by, in the case of Room 0 Trauma, 3.2%. This is effectively a 33% damage increase of what you would have inflicted before. Sounds big, but this is how percentages work. So skill power modifier is actually very important to Freyna and how you want to build her. So how does Freyna's build work? All right, how do you build Freyna? Okay, there are two ways that you can build Freyna. All right, now that you understand the difference between skill power modifier and skill power, okay, I'm going to show you the two ways from here that you can build Freyna. First and foremost, if you want to build her based on her skills rather than her ult, okay, you will go for skill power modifier. So you want to have Iron Defense. All right, let's put that up here. Then you want to have Technician. Now, you can also use Maximize Power. There's actually quite a few ways to get the modifier, okay? So if we were to put modifier up here, you can see there is Technician, there is, where is it? Skill Simplification, but this one will cost you MP. So it's up to you how you want to structure it and what kind of points you want to consume. If you were to go with the Technician route, it's not going to have any negatives for her skills, but it costs a lot more and the end effect is pretty bad. All right. So let's save this right now. You'll see that if you put in something like Technician, her skill power modifier, especially for the DOT skills, goes from, say for poison, it was 60% before, now it's 92%. So you're finally inflicting almost all of your skill power. Once the DOTs get as close to 100% as possible, you can then start to pump skill power, which would then help you out, all right, to deal more damage. So from here, what I would do is that I would build, say, skill power, just skill power directly, nothing else, right? And you've got two choices here. You can actually go for, actually, it's probably best that I do this. You can go for Toxic Specialist, which would boost her toxic skill power, and all her skills are toxic, so they all benefit from this. Or you can go for Toxic Master. Now, I actually leveled up Toxic Master without understanding this before, because I felt that the toxic skill power would be a separate multiplier, all right? But I did not realize how Freyna worked back then. So you can actually go for Toxic Specialist, which would work just as well, and in fact probably give you more bang for your buck than Toxic Master. I'm just going to be very frank about that, okay? Toxic Master and Toxic Specialist cannot both be equipped. So one thing which you can do is put in Toxic Specialist and then go for Tech Specialist, which would do the same thing, and all her damage inflicting skills are all tech based. So you could do something like that, but it does not work with Technician. So you're kind of stuck there. So you have to choose how you want to structure your things. I would rather, if you're going for DOTs, go for Technician. All right. If you're going for pure power, you can go for Tech Specialist instead of Technician. All right. And that is one of the variations that I'm going to show you. So coming back to this point, right? When you're working on DOT, first, you want to raise up the skill power modifier. So Technician, Iron Defense, and then Toxic Specialist or Toxic Master, whichever one you want. As for the rest of your modules, you can choose whatever you want, all right, to give her a bit more survival or whatnot. I usually take HP Collector, okay? And this gives you 6 free points that you can play around with, or you can buff up Toxic Specialist like I did to Toxic Master before. This would be her DOT build, okay? You can also try and choose to maximize range if you want on this. So if I'm not wrong, maximize range at base. All right. You don't really have to maximize duration, but if you maximize range at base, it's about 5 points, but it does have a negative skill power modifier of -5. So just be aware of that. You can also take skill expansion. That also works to increase her range. Like I said, at this point is whatever you want to do with the spare points. You can choose to buff up her damage a bit, which would modify how much her skills do at base. All right. Plus you've already buffed up the modifier, so that's all good. Okay. This is the DOT Freyna. Now let's talk about the other type of Freyna. The other type of Freyna, okay, is all about her ultimate skill. All right. This one is more for Colossi. All right. And it focuses solely on buffing up her ultimate only. Okay. So if you want to buff her ultimate only, take note that the ultimate does not need additional modifiers. Her skill power modifiers are already so high that even if you were to increase the modifier, you're not going to get the best out of this. So this is what you would have seen me do versus the Colossi. Okay. Against the Colossi, I would take out Iron Defense, all this kind of stuff. Against the Colossi, how I would build her is a little bit different. You'll want Nimble Fingers to give her the maximum possible cooldown. This makes her ult go from 110 seconds down to 81.8 seconds, which means that you have more uptime for your ult, as in you can trigger it more, right? Now, with the remaining skill power, what you want is your Toxic. You can go either Toxic Specialist, Toxic Master. The one you would have seen in my Colossus builds are all Toxic Master, which again was a mistake. I would have rather put Toxic Specialist. Then I would probably put Tech Specialist as well. Okay. And with the remaining 6 points, you can do whatever you want. You don't need range expansion. You don't need increased duration. You can actually choose to focus on pure power when you're doing something like this. So against Colossi, I would probably also have some resistance against whatever the Colossus is. But this is a bossing build for Freyna. This one, like I said, focuses purely on her ult. You don't need to use any of her other skills. You are only focusing on her ult and making sure that she has enough raw power to absolutely decimate her opponents. All right. Are there any other ways that you can increase skill power? There should be. There should actually be. If I'm not wrong, there is one more mod you can put in. I just can't remember which one it is. Can't put in that because the module of the same group is already in. Can I put in power increase? No, I cannot. So module of the same group's already in. No, that will not work. Maximize power, nope, either. Darn. I did think, oh, is it walk a tightrope? I think it might be. When your hit points are lower, you have more firearm attack and skill power, but you'd have to be below 50% to trigger that. I am so sorry because I did vaguely remember that there was some other thing that you could put in to increase power, but maybe I was wrong about that, so I do apologize. But for F2P, right, this is good enough, all right? I did want to talk about it because I'm sort of moving into the end game now, But if I do change up anything in the end game Freyna builds, you'll hear about it first on stream, and then you'll probably hear about it in later videos. So again, I apologize for the confusion. You have my sincerest apologies for that. I was mistaken. So these two should be good enough, and you want to buff them up as high as you can, and focus then on survival. Make sure you have survival, and this is probably the maximum cooldown that you can get. When it comes to cooldowns, right, I don't think there's many other mods that you can add for cooldowns. No, this is for sub attack. Maximize duration, no. Because even if you increase the duration, she's got a set number of bullets. So that's why I don't really believe in increasing the duration. I just make sure she can bump out all the bullets in that time. You could go with outstanding investment, but again, what you're trying to go for is mostly the duration on her poison and the room 0 trauma, not so much the gunning of her weapon. So if you want to buff up, excuse me, if you want to buff up the duration, you can go with that. Time distribution, aha, can I actually put this in? Yes, this is the one. Okay, so if you want additional skill cooldowns plus more maximum hit points, you can actually use time distribution, which works really well for her bossing build, all right? Reduces her cooldowns, increases her max hit points, and this would be what a bossing build looks like. Now, again, I wouldn't use this for the F2P style because you really want to upgrade this as much as you can to make the most out of the mod capacity. And you could probably push another 10 points in here, taking this all the way up to a cost of, I mean, if you put another 10 points in here, well, you'd get another 8 points out of this. You could, it would cost you another 4, all right? And you'd have 2 points left over, which you could put into tech specialist, or say any of the other ones here for more survival. But basically, you could get her alt up all the time, or you could take out battle stamina and put in time distribution. Same effect, roughly the same effect, but you'd get more, I guess, uptime for your alt. Because if you save it, right, her alt goes down from 81 seconds down to 77 seconds. So it's up to you how you want to structure it, but this is a bossing build for Freyna. All right. That about covers both the Freyna builds. You can either choose to go DOT for in-field combat, or you can go cooldowns for bossing. It's really up to you what you want to do. Thank you very much for listening to this. All right. I hope this has been informative for those of you trying to do this free to play. I will cover with Energy Activator and Catalyst all in future, so please do look forward to that. I will try and help you guys as much as I possibly can. Thank you very much for watching this video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I hope you guys will enjoy the content that I'm about to bring. More builds are coming soon for more Descendants, so look forward to that. Thank you. And before we go, remember, don't forget to register your support if you haven't already. And if you want to be mentioned in my videos, then make sure you are one of my top channel members or top channel supporters. This is different from an Exxon supporter. Okay, these are the guys that donate directly to the channel. And starting with July's top supporters, we have our top super chatter is Salem. Top super chatter list includes Don Magix, John McKinley, Arcane Silver, Crixus, Mr. Rex, Princess Star, i3XO, Ted Wu, Iron SBO. Top channel membership gifter is i3XO. Top channel membership gifter list includes LGS Immortal and Track Hoodie. Thank you guys so much for our top channel members. Okay, and I apologize for all the coughing throughout this video. I really am doing my best. Okay, our top channel members are George Tichon at the OnlyFan level, BVS Fang, i3XO, Kyle Gross at the OnlyFan level, all right, Nisk at the OnlyFan level, and Arcane Silver and Death Dawning at Plus Ultra. Thank you guys so much for all you do for me. All right, you guys are amazing. I'll see you guys on the next one. Y'all have a good one. Catch you later.